G'day mate, welcome to episode 62 of the Exponential Performance Podcast. In this week's episode, Exponential Performance coach Nick Taylor sits down with ultra runner Sarah Browne to talk about her journey through ultra running and also her experiences in the recent Alps to Ocean Ultramarathon. I found this interview really interesting, especially how Sarah goes about balancing her full-time workload with training for ultra marathon races. So here it is. I hope you enjoy it. Let's get into it.
Welcome to the Exponential Performance Podcast. Join sports scientist and performance coach Maddie Graham to find out how to train smarter and maximize your performance no matter who you are.
All right, welcome along guys to the Exponential Performance Podcast with a special interview today with Sarah Browne. Now, Sarah Browne is an ultra runner from Dunedin, and we thought we'd get her along to talk about a race she's just completed that is of monumental proportion, and we'll get to that shortly. But Sarah also holds a full-time job as a finance manager at the university in Dunedin. So she's doing a whole bunch of training, which we're going to hear about, and holding down a professional job. So I thought it'd be really cool to get her along and have a bit of a chat. Now the disclaimer goes out that Sarah and I are good friends. So if you pick up on that, then that's all good. But it should help for a funnier interview. But thank you for coming along, Sarah.
Thank you for inviting me.
That's cool. So we're going to start off with a few quick-fire questions, and they're just to get you warmed up, and you can pass on any that you don't want to answer. Okay?
Okay, I know that.
Cool. So how old are you?
38.
You go. Yeah, think about that, didn't you?
I did.
So,
I forget how old I am. It's getting too old.
Fair enough too. And how do you have your coffee?
Oh, I can't admit how I have my coffee because people will look down on me. I like having cream in my coffee. Just a little bit, tiny little bit.
There you go. There's probably a huge community.
Americano. Single shot Americano with a little bit of cream.
There you go. But there'll be a huge community of people listening here that will also adopt the cream in their coffee. So don't have to worry about that. What's your favourite food?
My favourite food is, it's tough. Chocolate and wine are the first things that come to my mind.
Good combination.
Yes.
Yes. And what's one item you cannot live without?
My Lululemon clothes. All of them. All
Nice.
of them. There's a lot.
Yep. The last book you read?
The last book I read, I'm reading The 7 Habits of Highly Successful People by Stephen Covey, and I listened to it on audiobook, and I'm listening to it for the second time.
Cool.
So that
It's
counts as reading it?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm a big fan of that book. That's really cool.
It's amazing.
Yeah. And are you a morning person or a night owl?
Definitely a morning person.
Cool. And did you have a favourite soft toy growing up? And if so, what was his or her name?
Nope, none.
No?
No
Okay.
dolls, no, nothing like that. No.
There you go. There you go. And final one is, what gets you out of bed in the morning? What's your motivation to get up?
All the things that I want to achieve before I get to work, probably. Like I said, I'm a morning person, so I like getting lots of things done before other people can take control of my day.
Perfect. And that might give some people an insight into how Sarah becomes so successful, I guess, with her ultra running, by being a morning person, but taking control, I guess, in the morning before work gets in the way. Mm-hmm. So before we get to the Alps to Ocean race, we're just interested to know, like, how many kilometres do you think you've run in the last 12 months, roughly?
I added it up today, so I've done about 4,500 kilometres in the last 12 months, which is an average of about 86 kilometres a week.
That's cool. It's a decent amount of kilometres.
It's probably more than what I would like to admit. Yeah, it's a lot.
Yeah, that's. I guess the total distance across that sort of period is relative to yourself, though. You know,
yes,
you've done some big events and had some big weeks in preparation for that. So 4.5 is a really cool amount.
I've never done as many ultra races in the last 12 months ever before.
Yeah, and that certainly helps tick up the Ks.
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
And do you know how many metres of elevation there is in that?
I do, 118,000. So that's,
Okay.
I worked out again an average, it's about 2,270 a week, which is a lot.
118,000. That is, yeah, that's monumental.
Yeah.
It's really cool.
It helps
I mean, I guess,
right?
yeah,
There's all these
exactly. I was going to say, yeah, it's a great place for that. And I'm interested to know, how many pairs of shoes have you been through in the last 12 months?
Count. I've completely lost count. I go through shoes like probably once every 2 or 3 months.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, nice. That's cool.
Yeah. Usually have 2 or 3 on the go at any one time.
Yes. Yeah, and they do. There's a lot of runners do talk about that, don't they? Just to spread the load over different types of shoes.
Yeah, I definitely did that because I've moved to the ultras, which I think are more, for ultra runners. And it took a long time to get used to them, so I mixed up my different shoes. Yeah,
certainly. And we could probably have a whole podcast and looking at that movement into zero drop shoes and the slow progression that's needed to avoid blowing out and blowing calves and so forth. So that's cool.
I actually got injured on the race that we're going to talk about, the Alps to Ocean, and I think part of it was to do with the zero drop shoes because I hurt my Achilles.
Okay.
So even with all my preparation and all of the getting used to it, it still made a difference.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, that's good to know. We'll touch on that a wee bit down the track. And what's the coolest event that you've done? It could be the smallest event or the biggest.
The biggest in my mind would probably be, so not actually a race, the first time I had a go at running the Kepler, just on a random day. In fact, we've run it together. But before that, when I was probably in my early 20s, I remember walking the Kepler track, and I had just started running at that time. And I remember seeing some people come through the last hut, the motorway hut, end of the day, and they had run it. And I remember thinking, you ran it? How on earth do you do that? But the seed was sown, and then fast forward, 10 years, or probably even more than that, like maybe almost 15 years, and I ran it for the first time. I couldn't wipe the smile off my face because it was like a dream come true.
Yeah.
So I didn't have to do the race. I just went and did it. Yeah.
Yeah, perfect. And it's such a beautiful part of the country. For those of you that don't know, the Kepler is down in Te Anau, so in Fiordland, sort of the bottom west-hand corner, I guess, of New Zealand. And it's a mixture of sort of alpine passes, looking up some massive big fjords, and then kind of a rainforest that undulates out to the, and it is stunning. It's one of the great walks. And like Sarah said, there is a race over it every year which sells out year on year. But you can go any time of the year, safety-wise, obviously, in the winter's not ideal, and do it yourself. So we highly recommend getting there if you can and having a go. Cool. But even though it wasn't the best race you've ever, or the best, coolest thing you've ever done, the Alps to Ocean. Now, without giving too much of it away, the Alps to Ocean is a track that's been made, I guess, by the New Zealand government, which runs from Mount Cook all the way out to Oamaru, which is on the east coast of the South Island in New Zealand. And so I'll get Sarah to give us a wee rundown on the event, sort of how many Ks it was altogether, and the structure of it, just to give a bit of a background.
Okay, thanks, Nick. The one thing I will say at the start was this is the second year that this event has been run, and unlike these kind of races that happen overseas, and they're quite common overseas, this race, all the proceeds went to go to charity. So the organisers don't take any money for themselves. They're local businessmen in Oamaru, and the guy who has been running it is Michael Sandry, and all of the money goes back into youth development in Oamaru, which is an amazing cause. Like, how good is it to go running for a week and know that you are actually helping young people to change their lives? So that's probably the first thing. The race itself was about 325 kilometres over a period of 7 days. And we started in Mount Cook and finished, everyone bussed to Mount Cook, and we finished in Oamaru a week later. And we stayed in tents. There were 2 races. You could either choose to be unsupported, which meant that you carried all of your food, your sleeping bag, your sleeping mat, and everything else, all your mandatory gear yourself, I didn't choose to do that one. Just actually doing a multi-day race was enough for me. And so I took the supported option, which meant we had 16 kgs that we had to fit everything into. And actually that's not a lot of weight when you consider, I think my gear was about 9 kgs, and so I didn't have a lot. I only had 7 kgs for 7 days of food. So I was feeling like the whole week was going to be a lot of deprivation. There wasn't too many choices of what I was going to take for food. The only thing they supplied was hot water and cold water, so no showers. There were toilets along the way, although not as many as I might have liked to have had on the checkpoints during the day. But there was about 18 tents so there was a group of volunteers that helped put up the tents every day. And so we had 6 people sleeping to one tent. Tents got pretty smelly by the end of the week. And so each day, a typical day would kind of start like this, was get woken up at 5 a.m. to a cacophony of songs where things like Wake Me Up When It's Over, Run to Paradise, One Step in Front of the Other. Like, it was so cheesy. It was hilarious. And every morning I had a good laugh about that. And we started running at 7 most days. It was freezing cold in the mornings, like really, really cold. You'd be nice and warm in the tent, but by the time you got up and had breakfast and packed everything up, I was usually shivering by the time we started. And then and then we started running. So this race caters to the elite runners, to also the people who are doing it to make their bucket list. So my mum did it, and she walked it all. So she decided, and there were a lot of people like that were just doing this to see if they could do it. And then you had some real elite athletes that were still running 4-minute kilometres on the last day. So there was a huge range of, you'd run anywhere from 7 in the morning to about 1 in the afternoon, but others wouldn't come in until like 10 o'clock at night. So it was a huge day for those that were walking. And once you finished for the day, it was a matter of trying to get yourself ready for the next day, which meant visiting the physio tent. We had a group of physios that were there, lining up to the nurses to help pop any blisters or take care of anything. And there was also a couple of doctors that were helping out with anything else. And so it was just a matter of preservation, really, and it was just fueling up for the next day and eating lots of food and sitting around chatting, just trying to recover in time to go to bed probably like 7 or 8 at night, and then get up and do the whole thing again.
Yeah, that's impressive. Even just the description of it kind of makes, I guess, someone like myself a wee bit quivery and sweaty in the thought of having to do something like that.
Yeah, the idea of it sounded great, and I loved telling people, I'm going to do this race. But actually the reality of how do you get up and run day after day was something that started dawning on me the closer it got. I was like, this is ridiculous. How do you do this? Yeah.
Yes. I wanted, one thing you're saying, that the supported versus unsupported groups. Unsupported athletes have access to like the physio and the nurse and so forth as well? Yeah, they did. Yeah. It was a matter of realistically, okay. So the only difference was they had to carry their sleeping bag and sleeping mat. But everything else is pretty much the same.
We had to carry a daily allowance of food. So the minimum requirements that we had to take was about 2,200 calories, I think. So they had to carry 7 days worth on the first day, whereas we would carry one day, or there was one, the longest day was 90 kilometres, and we had to carry 2 days worth, so 4,400 calories plus all the mandatory gear. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, the fact that in most cases a stage race that is supported, I mean, if we think of like the Pioneers, probably the other main example as a mountain bike stage race in New Zealand, the supported, well, they only have one option, but supported there is like full-on catered, like you might as well be in a hotel, except the fact you're in a tent that they pitch for you. You've got your own individual tent, your own gear bag, they take it all for you, and it's like a smorgasbord at the end of each day.
Yeah, don't they feed you? Don't they do everything for you?
So that kind of makes yours seem like an unsupported race quite easily. So it's amazing that the supported option is as basic as that you have to carry your own food even for dinners and so forth. But yet there is an unsupported option as well that some people obviously were crazy enough to take on board.
If they offered a luxury one, even if I had to pay more money, I would definitely sign up for that.
Yeah. I think a lot of people probably would as well.
Yeah, I'll be giving feedback on that.
But you said, so your mum did it, and I know your dad was part of the events crew as well, because you were born, well, you grew up in Oamaru, didn't you?
I did, yes. Yeah.
So in terms of, your mum was doing it as well, the money has been donated to a charity based in your hometown. Mm-hmm. How much of that was a sort of a motivational factor or a hindrance at times, I guess, for you?
It was a motivation factor. Initially, I was put off probably by the cost, but then when I found out that it was for a charity, that made me change my mind. And growing up in Oamaru is a small town, and I definitely got well supported through the licensing trust to do different things, and knowing that the locals really get behind it, and I think there's something in that. Like, the people who came from overseas, because there were more people from overseas than there were New Zealanders doing the event. Okay. And everyone who has done these kind of events overseas, like the Grand is probably the most famous one in America, they all said there was something really special about this race. And I think that's because the locals really got behind it. So like my dad is a good example. He's a self-employed businessman in Oamaru, as were all of the other volunteers. So we had physios that have a practice in Oamaru. They gave up their entire week's income to come and support. And we had 2 doctors that did that, 2 nurses. And there was just so many people that run businesses in Oamaru that came along and supported, like the main sponsors being Anchor. They're also personal friends. They just believe in this, and they love the fact that they are giving people the opportunity to see this part of the country, but also have an impact on the community. Like, what's not to love about that, and being involved with it? There's something really special about it.
And that's for sure. And it's really cool. I mean, Oamaru is not too far from Dunedin, where you now live, and where I live. And it is cool that these events are bringing the smaller towns onto a world stage, I guess, from these international athletes that have come over here. They've felt that something special and unique about our events, and they go home and they tell their friends, and then their friends want to come out and do it. So that's really cool.
The entries are open for next year, and I think they've already almost filled up because of word of mouth.
Yeah, that's cool. That's really cool. So I guess we've kind of touched a little bit on it. What made you want to do it?
Do you want the real answer? It just sounded like fun. When Mum told me that she had signed up for it, I wasn't. And she said, will you do it with me? I said, no, I don't want to do that. That's ridiculous. But then I was thinking I did want a challenge, and I was considering the God Zone, but I just wasn't sure if that was what I really wanted to do. And I do love running more than I love multi-sport. And so I took another look at this and thought, actually, why not? And it was as simple as that. It helped me go through the hard times. Just, it sounded like a great idea. Yeah.
It'll be a pretty special person to look at a 320 kilometre 7-day race, pretty much unsupported, and think, that looks like fun.
Kind of. When you say it like that.
Yeah, that's just my way of painting it, because it doesn't sound fun to me, but I can see the appeal, because the equivalent kind of thing, biking, perhaps would seem like fun. And that's a big part, obviously, setting these massive goals for these big things. If you're brought into it right from the start, in terms of actually this is going to be fun, how do I make it fun the whole way through? Can really help achieve that goal out the other end.
I was just going to say the fun part is almost the achievement of the goal, or the setting of a goal, and then working without even knowing how you're going to achieve it, and then working your way towards it till it moves from feeling impossible into maybe this is possible, and then actually doing it. I think there's something in that. Maybe the actual running wasn't that fun. I don't know.
Yes, and another friend of ours recently said to me, you weren't present at the time, but you never see someone running with a smile on their face. And I was like, let's think about that for a minute. And you don't often see someone running down the middle of the road with a smile on their face.
Maybe you haven't seen me running.
Like you said, good, I'll pass it on to him. But I guess that, like you said, the the build up of structuring the training, getting your volume up, so the feeling of achievability is there, and it's helping to switch that mindset from, okay, it's impossible, never going to work, I'm just going to keep slogging away, but it's not going to happen, to actually I do feel like I could probably do this, and then that completion of the goal, it must be a surreal feeling. It's like 7 times the normal goal, essentially, isn't it? Because it's 7 days of an ultramarathon.
7 times a runner's high at the end.
Pretty cool. But I guess on that then, so I know you said on average you've run 83 kilometres a week in the last 12 months, but a general kind of average week of training for you in the build-up to this Alps to Ocean, what would that roughly look like from a sort of the type of running you're doing, and also, I guess, the volume?
So I do commute running. I live about 4 kilometres from work, and it's mostly downhill in the mornings and then all uphill in the afternoons. So probably on a Monday and a Wednesday, and maybe a Monday and a Wednesday, I would just run to and from work. That would be it. And then on a Tuesday and a Thursday, typically I would run to work, so just under half an hour, and then running pretty slowly, and then I would normally run about 2 hours to get home, 2.5 hours. So I'd run via Flagstaff, so look for all the hills possible, and so just kind of build it into my work day as much as possible. It's going to take you half an hour to get home, no matter how you whether you drive or you bike or whatever. So I just try and tag onto that. And I listen to lots of audio books as well. And then on the weekends, on a Saturday and Sunday, I'd usually try and do back-to-back days, because I knew that was the most important thing in my training, was to practice running back-to-back and being able to do that. So on the weekends, I'd probably do between 3 and 4 hours, or maybe say 3.5 or 4 hours on a Saturday, followed up by 3 hours on a Sunday. And then sometimes I'd take like Monday and or Friday off, unless I ran and just did it easy. But I'd definitely make sure I had at least one complete rest day a week.
Yeah. And that's interesting, I guess, around that community side of things. And I know that concept of, the half an hour that it takes you to get there is almost the same no matter what. It used to be okay, it's 5 minutes to town, but it's not anymore. Like even in Dunedin, in a small town, the mould has shifted, and obviously Auckland and those bigger cities around New Zealand, it's a lot worse as well. So, but not everyone can, given the nature of where they work or how they have to get to work. But being able to incorporate training into your commuting time is a fantastic use of time. And gets you on those double runs. Exercising twice in one day is hard enough for anybody. But when I'm just going to run to work, I'm going to run home, and you've run 8 to 10 Ks across 2 runs. And there are some really cool, I guess, metabolic effects that can accompany double run days, so back to back on the same day. And 4 or 5 Ks is probably enough. It's just the effect that you're exercising twice at either end of the day. And then obviously you mentioned those sort of back-to-back bigger runs, which is also, obviously you can't run 7 days and train the distance as some people would talk about for a marathon or half marathon. But those back-to-back long days really do start to add in a lot of sort of fatigued running, which is fantastic, I guess, for what you're up against. How you move your body when it's fatigued. When your Achilles aching, how do you keep running downhill? And so that's really, sounds like a really structured approach that was very sensible.
I always run, and I've always done this according to feel. So if I'm really tired, I don't train. So I'm not one of those people that can push through and just go, right, this is on my training plan, because I don't have a coach. I have people like you who give me help and just, do you think is that the right thing? But otherwise, I largely go based on what I think is structured, but I always put room in for, I'm really, really tired, I'm just not going to train today. And I think that's always served me quite well.
And that's a fantastic approach to training if you have the self-motivation like you do, that you don't need the Monday to Sunday structure, and you can be really flexible based on how you feel. A lot of people, I guess, can't do that because they need the, it's almost like the school teacher telling them what to do each day to get it done. And no, please go.
If someone tries to set a plan for me, I just seem to, I can't do it. I seem to struggle. I do the opposite. So it works better if I don't have a lot of structure. I have a general what I need to do. I know the kilometres or I know the types of runs I need to do, and I just make it up each day.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's the crux to it. You know roughly what you need to do. There's a lot of people who have come before us and can share some knowledge as to, okay, this is the general kind of structure you need. You need to do a couple of speedier runs and you need to do a longer run each week and then make the rest up around that. And I'm much the same. I mean, it's not great that the coach doesn't like to be coached, but I don't necessarily do that well with a structured Monday to Sunday plan because I like to be able to go and do that track because it's really good today and tomorrow's going to be pouring down with rain type of thing. So it's an interesting thing, I guess, with structure versus unstructure in a environment where we utilise things like training peaks and Strava and so forth to plan training, but it's not always the best fit for a person. But they need advice, and how do you get that advice across? How do you monitor them without giving them a plan on a Training Peaks or type of platform?
Yeah, that's a good point. I am very structured in every other part of my life, so it is a bit surprising. Us,
group of friends for her spreadsheets for various things.
Yeah,
so I can contest to that. So we've looked at, I guess, your average week of training. What do you think was your biggest week of training then?
My biggest week was 150 kilometres, which was a lot more than I normally did. So most of my high weeks were about 110, 120, never got anywhere over that. And I had one week, which was also my worst week of training, that where I did 150 kilometres. But it so happened I tried to do probably about 6 weeks out from the race, and I tried to do 2 back-to-back days of about 50k each day, just trying to simulate the race. Everything went wrong. Absolutely. I got blisters where I've never had blisters, and it seemed like my pack wasn't working, my shoes weren't right, my socks weren't right. I just nothing. And I think my biggest issue was I walked rather than running. So I decided that I would, people said, chances are you might end up walking. And so I thought, well, I better practice walking, but it didn't work for me. So the first day I tried to walk and I was a complete mess and I cried at the end of the day, and I thought, how am I going to do this race? Like, what am I, am I kidding myself? It was definitely my low point in my training. And then the next day I thought, I've just got to get up and do this again, because if this happens in the race, then I'm going to have to do it. So I got up and taped my feet, and then I just decided I wasn't going to do any more walking. So that was my get out of trouble card, was just run rather than walking. Yeah. Walking does not work for me. Yeah. No. But it taught me a lot about what not to do, and that was my last long run. And I did actually do what you're not supposed to do, where I changed things up because of everything that didn't go well. And when I did the race, there was some things that I tried that I hadn't practiced, because I think I'd practiced everything that wasn't going to work ahead of not ideal.
No, but I mean, I guess in one way you can look at that as being, that was a shit week of training and all the stuff went wrong, but in essence that is probably what helped make you so successful come race week.
It did, because I think I was getting a bit cocky because everything had gone really well, and I was like, this has been great. And then that week I realised how much I needed my blister kits, and I needed to understand how I was going to manage my feet. I needed to get my nutrition better than what I had. Yeah. So it's good. Sometimes those things where you feel like you're failing actually are the best thing that happened to you. Yeah,
totally. And that's the number one thing for these longer events. Maybe for a half marathon, it's not as important unless you are, very fresh to that kind of distance. But being able to get out on in your case, you're actually on the course. And it's not always possible, but something very similar to the course in terms of underfoot terrain. If it's a gravel road, you want to be on a gravel road. If it's a tarmac run, you want to be on the tarmac, trying out your shoes, your nutrition, your packs, everything for a decent period of time, not just a couple of hours. Oh yeah, the shoes feel fine. It's not until the 6th and 7th hour that you start to notice those little annoyances about a pair of socks or a pair of shoes or something like that.
That's so true. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's a lot to be said for picking that weekend. 6 weeks is a great time for a running race. Gives you a really good time to recover, but it also gives you that extra time. Okay, hey, things went wrong. What do I need to do?
Yeah.
And a few weeks to wear some shoes in, or to break a pair of socks in, or to try a couple of different meals for your nutrition and so forth. So that's cool. That's cool. I'm intrigued about the nutrition component to it. Obviously, that's something I'm very interested by, is nutrition. And 2,200 calories a day is not a lot when
No, it's not enough.
average person. I on an average day would need like 2,500 calories just without doing anything. That's just normal day-to-day stuff. So you're under eating that way. Obviously, there's a bit of a weight difference between the two of us, but when you consider that you're exercising for hours and hours each day, what did you take with you, I guess, given the weight limits, and how did you feel hungry? Did you find that you had stomach issues? Was there anything in that nutrition plan that didn't quite go how you'd hoped?
There was a lot of stuff that didn't go to plan. I made a lot of mistakes in this area, so if I went back into this again, I would definitely change the food aspect. I had the same food every day, and that was my mistake number one, because all I craved was variety. When I got up, I was like, what? I've got to have oats and 1 square meal bars for 7 days in a row? That's not fun. Even though the minimum was 2,200 calories, I took about 3,000 for each day, because I knew that was definitely not going to be enough. But the weight restrictions was a huge restriction. So the things that I trained on, and I love to train with wraps with avocado and hummus and like really good plant-based whole food as much as possible. So real food. I don't like gels. Never been able to eat any of that kind of food. I tried to get as much natural food as possible, and I trained on that. But when it came down to it, in the days leading up to it, I kept on weighing my bag, and I was overweight, and I had to keep switching food out for things that I didn't really want. And that was really tricky. And a lot of people got sick after Alps to Ocean, and I think that's a big component of it, that you're not getting any real food. I literally ate powdered, dried food for a whole week, and that was tricky. So my typical day was a couple of things of rolled oats for breakfast. I had Tailwind. Tailwind is the only electrolyte that I've been able to have successfully through other ultra races and not get stomach issues. So I had quite a few calories of that, and if I did it again, I'd take more, because it's really hard to eat after days upon days of running. I also took a lot of the raw bars, so like Ceres Organics raw bars, and they were quite hard to eat after a few days, and M's cookies. So a lot of food that I would normally not want to eat, but I knew that I had to eat a lot during the day. And I had lots of nuts and lollies, and the nuts were great from a calorie density point of view. And for the evening, I had some food that was like vegan, freeze-dried food, which probably sounds terrible, but it was actually really, really good. And most of my meals were about 600 calories for the evening, but it was never enough. And my only treat that I had was 75 grams of chips. So of like your salt and vinegar chips or green onion, I had that, and that was what I look forward to every day.
Yeah.
About 350 calories in my chips.
It must be tricky when you're trying to weigh up the benefit of food based on how many calories it's giving you. And pretty much all other races, it's like, okay, well, I can take a whole plastic container full of food and go past there and pick it up every couple of, maybe every 50 Ks or something. But now you're literally, okay, that bar's only 40 calories versus this one, which is 60. So I'm going to take that one, which I may prefer the other one better. And that's really tricky.
It is tricky. And I ate really well for the first couple of days, and I went into the Alps to Ocean knowing that I had to eat every day, not for that day, but for the future days. And I knew that I would never get through it if I didn't eat well. And for the first 3 days, I was really good. So the first 2 days were about 50 Ks each day. And then the third day was 90 kilometres. So that was a massive increase. And I did well until about the 60K mark. And after that, I really struggled to eat. And I was beating myself up because I thought, this is the whole point. You've got to eat, even though you don't want to eat and you can't eat and it's coming back up again. You've got to eat because otherwise you're putting the rest of the week in jeopardy. On the rest day, I took a break from anything that was sweet. So people were kind. People had couscous and mashed like potato and gravy that was dried. So you just had to add water to it. And that kind of food was what I craved. And I wish that I'd taken more noodles, more like potato and gravy and anything that was savoury. Crisp bread. I wish I'd taken my wraps, even though I might have had to take less clothes or something like that just to be able to get it in.
Yeah. And it seems to be a common thing. I mean, I don't think I've ever heard anyone after a race say, I wish I had more sweet food. So many sports nutrition, whether it be electrolytes, gels, bars, are sweet.
They are.
And your body, you just get to a point of just being so sick of sweetness. So I can certainly appreciate wanting some powdered potato and gravy or something like that.
Yeah, well, I'm vegetarian and I think I might have had some chicken gravy, but I didn't care. I was just really hungry. I was going to say, there's probably certain points in life, and that might be one of them, where a little bit of chicken gravy is not going to be I decided it was worth it just to get rid of the hunger pains.
Totally. And so I guess on the back of that, I was going to ask you what your darkest moment in the race was, but you might have just talked about that, did you, with that 60K stage and that big day?
No. I think I had 2 dark moments. One was on the second day, which surprised me. I didn't expect to feel bad probably about 25 Ks into the 50K day on the second day. And I suddenly found myself walking, and I couldn't believe it that I was walking, and I thought, what's wrong? But I just couldn't seem to pull myself together, and I'd eaten well and I was running well, and someone ran past me, and I said, oh, how you going? And he said, oh, this is terrible. I'm really, really struggling. And there's something just in sharing a bit of pain that actually takes you out of that moment. And I was on the verge of crying, and I was like, this is horrible. I'm not enjoying this. What was I thinking doing this? But somehow just sharing that pain really lifted me out of it. And I ended up running with that guy for the rest of the day. And it turned out he had a daughter the same age as me. And we became best friends, and we ran in a train, like just helping each other out for the rest of the day. So that was a moment. But actually my last day, surprisingly, was the worst day, and that was my birthday. And we only had 30 Ks on the last day. And I woke up and I thought, I've got nothing. I was hungry, and I couldn't bring myself to eat anything. I had my breakfast, which was oats, and I had my tailwind as I was running, and that was the hardest day I've ever run. I was in the hurt box for 3 hours, and I cried constantly throughout that morning. I just couldn't believe how much pain I had. By that stage, I had blisters on every toe. So I'd managed a couple of days at the start without getting blisters, and I've always got blisters when I'm running. So to go 2 days without having any showed that my preparation was good. But I think just the sheer volume, like everyone had blisters. And I also hurt my Achilles on the rest day was when I noticed it, but I must have hurt it on the third day, on the long day. And so I ran for 3 days with a really swollen Achilles. And on the last day, I could barely put my feet in my shoes because they were so swollen. So that was a tough day. And even when I finished at the finish line, I just was crying because I was like, I'm just hurting so much. Yeah, so that was definitely the darkest. But I knew then I was going to finish, so it was kind of mixed with I had actually done this, but it was like, this just hurts. This hurts more than I've ever experienced in my life.
Yes. I guess that kind of emotional wave won't have been helping that component too. The thought, okay, I'm about to finish this race. It's only 30 Ks to go. It's, a fraction of what I've come. I'm going to see, friends and family. It's my birthday. Like all this emotional stuff's going on, but you're physically just wrecked as well. So those emotions are right at the centre or right at the surface. just waiting to kind of be sort of exposed. So it doesn't surprise me that last 30 Ks was the toughest. And it'd be interesting to know if other people found the same thing along the way.
Yeah, judging by the times, everyone seemed to run really fast that day, so they clearly had held a bit more back than what I did.
Yeah, running to the food.
Yes.
The pub.
Real food. Real food.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, we could probably delve into many different components of this outstation, but I kind of want to wrap it up with a question as to if you could go back and do this tomorrow, would you do anything differently? But would you go back and do it again?
I would go back and do it again. I didn't think I would. Not for it took me about 3 days to come around to, maybe I could do that again. Maybe I could go a bit faster. Because it was hard to know how much to push yourself each day because you didn't know how much you had to hold back for the end. So if I went back and did it again, I would do the food situation differently. Yeah. But otherwise, I was thinking about this. What would I do differently? I sometimes spent a bit more time by myself at the end of the day because I was so tired. But in hindsight, I wish I'd spent more time going around and meeting all of the different people that did it because there was 120 people that started and 98 that finished. And everyone had a story. And I didn't meet a lot of people, but I think there were still people I didn't quite get to and chat to. And I think I would do that slightly differently. Yeah. Otherwise, I'd do it all again, and I'd maybe try and go a bit faster.
Cool. That's really. I mean, it's great when people, something of that kind of magnitude, and are happy to say, yeah, actually, I would do that was cool, and that kind of helps, I guess, gives credit to the race organisers and the whole process of the race, but also to your planning and your testament. While your food was a bit the rest of it went pretty smoothly. And that's your planning and I guess preparation. So it does lead me to one question that I've got to ask at the start. How long did it take to run 325 kilometres?
For me, I was just under 41 hours. I think the fastest guys were in the low 30 hours. They were still doing ridiculous speeds on the first day. And my mum finished in about 63 hours. So it was a huge range in terms of...
That is...
Yeah.
Yeah, but 41 hours, it's just like going to work for the week, isn't it, really?
It is. Except it's a good work week.
Or you've sat down and cooked at Oamaru by foot. It's quite cool. Yeah.
Yeah,
that's really cool. I just wanted to go through a couple of, I guess, other questions around running in general, just to help paint the picture as to what makes you, and for people that meet you in the future at various races. But why do you run, or what made you start running? Because I know you've biked and you've done some swimming and gym work, etc. But what is it about running that rings your bells?
I started running properly when I was about 21 or 22. And to be honest, I did it to lose weight because I was quite chubby and I never really did. I had a few years after I left school where I never did any exercise. So I probably weighed about 10, 15 kgs more than I do now. And so running was my way to try and get fit, and it was easy because you just need a pair of shoes and you just go outside. And so I started, I remember probably my first run was I ran down the road about maybe 500 metres and I was absolutely spent. And so I sat down on the side of the road because I thought, I can't go home already. I've only run like 500 metres and I'm trying to lose weight, so I need to do something. And so I sat there for about 5-10 minutes until I decided it was a decent enough amount of time. Then I walked back home and I was like, this is not good. Running's not good.
Yeah.
But slowly over time, I think I did, if I'm honest, I started running as a way to escape and to try and, I guess I was working through a lot of things when I was in my early 20s. And so I used running as a bit of an escape. But someone introduced me to trail running when I was probably about 25, 26. And from there, I never looked back. And running became my favourite thing to do. And it was no longer something that I was trying to run away from maybe my life or myself. But it was actually my happy place. And it was where I went to reflect on life, and I learned a lot about myself, and just loved being outside, and I've never stopped that. So I love the trail running. It's like, yeah, I don't do it because I have to, and I never run if I don't want to, but I just love it.
Yeah, and that's, I guess, when you talk to a lot of people that do not just ultra running but trail running in particular, it's that love of being on the trail. Often you're by yourself or with a small group of people that you know really well. You're in nature, you can hear yourself crunching on the ground, or you've got some of your favourite tunes in your head, and it is a really sort of tranquil, almost meditative kind of sport in that respect. And I think there's heaps of people out there running on the road that should just run on a trail.
They should.
It pains me to see some people running along on the road that just look like it just sucks. Like, to get fit and to lose some weight, it's a mode of doing that. But as like you said, a mental release and a kind of a spiritual almost activity, it's really cool trail running.
Yeah.
So that's really cool. Now, you mentioned before that you're a vegetarian.
Yes.
So, not that there's no right or wrong from a nutritional point of view. And I know we've had conversations about nutrition before. But as a vegetarian, how do you make sure you get adequate nutrition? You probably know me, and I'm getting around the protein component, which is often the hardest for.
Yeah, everyone asks me this, how do you get your protein? And I'm not someone who can talk scientifically about it, but I just make sure I eat a really wide variety of food. I eat lots of beans and chickpeas and like falafel and different things, and lots of brown rice and veggies. I just try and eat lots of vegetables and lots of fruit, like lots of good food that's more plant-based, whole food, apart from my love of chips, potato chips, after I've been running. And you actually helped me, particularly in my lead up to this race, was having a protein shake after I pretty much every day in that last 6 weeks, I think, before I did the event. And I noticed a difference with that. But otherwise, yeah, just eating lots of good food.
Yeah, cool. And that's a fantastic recommendation, I guess, for anyone, whether you eat meat or you don't. Eating a wide variety of vegetables, fruits, grains, and if you are eating meat, eating the different varieties of meat as well, not just one sort of meat. So especially with protein shakes, they can be a really good addition to a heavy training load from a dietary point of view, just to get that protein level up. They're quick, they're easy, and you can often take them on to work with you, so you can have them wherever you need to. So
I have a green smoothie, and add the protein powder to my green smoothie.
Nice, yeah. Great option. One thing I just wanted to ask around, how much of an influence has your mum and her journey through ultra running or ultra events been? I know you've both just entered a 160 kilometre, so an ultramarathon miler together.
Kind of together. I think we egg each other on a little bit now, but I don't want her to be outdoing me, so I have to keep anything she steps up to, I kind of need to do it too, because I'm not going to be outdone by her. Yeah. But I must say I really admire my mum, and I think she's doing really well, because she never had the opportunities that I've had, and she's only come to this kind of thing in the last couple of years. I encouraged her to enter Challenge Wanaka a few years ago, and she said, oh, no, I can't do that. And then I just planted the seed, though, and then she said, do you think I could do it? And I said, yes, I do think you could do it. So she rang the race organiser and said, what's the cut-off time? And so when she found out it was 8.5 hours or something, she thought, actually, maybe I can do it in that time. And so that started her journey. She did that, and she got such a huge amount of confidence from it. And then she discovered like Naseby and the Hamner, some of these couple of places that have these ultra runs. And she walks it all. She can't run. She's hurt her back, and so walking is her mode of transport. But she is fast. She's consistent, and she has determination that I hope I've got a little bit of how much determination she's got. Yeah, so I'm not going to let her do the Naseby mile without me.
No, fair enough. And having met your mum several times, you can certainly see the resemblance in terms of that sort of dogged determination. That, you know, okay, I've set myself this goal, I'm going to get there. It doesn't matter how long it's going to take me, I'm going to get there. And that's really cool. And she's an inspiration to many, but I think she could be an inspiration to a lot more once she gets to share her story from time to time.
Yeah, and I must say we can't do it without my dad though, because my dad's the best support crew ever. So I have to have a shout out for Dad, because he did the Alps to Ocean, and he did it last year as well, and he provided all the sound, like all the radios and all of the equipment that they need to communicate. And he put up the tents and took them down, and he's 65, and he did everything without complaining. And the first year he provided all the hot water. The volunteers get less sleep than what anyone else does. And he just does it with such a cheerful attitude, and just absolutely loves to give. And he does that for Mum and I. He's always dropping us off places so we can walk some track or do something, and he'll look after us. So we couldn't do it without him. No.
And despite the fact that he's your father, it's a great recognition, I guess, of volunteers in these events, because some of them they wouldn't happen without volunteers. And like you said, the volunteers put in countless hours, more than a full-time job, week in, week out, leading up to these events. So that's really cool that he's able to share that with you guys in his own way, and not have to do the running or walking himself.
Yeah, I asked him, do you reckon you could do that, Dad? And he said, I reckon I could do a little bit, but not much.
Nice. Nicely put.
Yeah.
Nicely put.
Yeah.
So what's next for you on a running scale? Did you have, obviously you talked about Naseby. Yeah? Cool. And it's 100 miles?
Otherwise, nothing. I don't really have any other plans. Next year I'm going to go to Portugal and Spain and do some of the Camino Trail. That's probably the next big thing.
Cool.
Yeah, but that's more for fun. It's not a race.
No. Okay. And is that your long-term goal at this stage for the Camino Trail, to tick some of that off?
No, I've never been good at having long-term goals, but my life kind of motto is to make sure it's an adventure. So anything that comes along that looks like it might fit within that will be picked up. But I don't generally have this huge bucket list of what I want to do. I just know that I'll keep looking for new things to do all the time.
Perfect. Cool. And one thing I wanted to try and, I guess, end the conversation with is around what your advice would be for someone maybe getting into their first ultra, or even getting into the ATO, so the Alps to Ocean race for next year, or even just getting off the couch and starting that running journey like you talked about. Do you have some words of wisdom to share?
Well, it seems quite a simple advice, but I think it's useful. It's just start. I think about where I started, and it took me years and years to build up to where I am now. And people think I'm a bit extreme, but I started with 5Ks, and I did a 10K race, and then I just ran a little bit further, and then a little bit further, and tried a new thing. And I think it is a journey over time, that if you just start somewhere, starting, taking one step is so much better. And I think even because when life gets hard, anything that's hard, you just have to do one little step, and then the more you do, the more momentum that you get. Yeah. But I would, if someone's out there thinking, I would love to have a go at an ultra, but I just don't know if I could do it, I think the ultra community is not like maybe some of the sports places that I've experienced. There's a real camaraderie, and there's the person who finished the Alps to Ocean first. I'm sure they got a good cheer, but the person who came last got an outstanding response. And there's just such a great community out there of people who do ultra events, and it's not about how you do it, it's about the fact that you're out there doing it. And so even if you walk it, even if you have to, stop or whatever, I would just say to people, give it a go, because you'll never, ever regret it. And find someone like me who's made a lot of mistakes, and pick their brains so that you can learn a lot and not have to make the same mistakes. That'll be my other piece of advice.
Yeah. And I think, like I said, because that ultra community is so so supportive. I mean, even, half marathon and marathons have the same sort of communities if you find the right people. There are a lot of people willing to share advice too. People and like Sarah said, just start, and that can be any sport, any facet of life. You want to quit your job, you got to start somewhere.
You do, yeah.
So it can be applied to any area. So that's really cool. But thank you, Sarah, for giving us your time. I'm sure people getting to know you, but also getting to know a little bit about that event and what made it all sort of tick. And you might have a few friendly faces coming up and saying hello at Naseby that have seen you on the podcast.
Hopefully. It's a pleasure. It's an absolute pleasure to share my passion and chat about it. So thank you.
Cool. No worries. Thank you.
Mate, thanks for listening. If you would like to support this podcast and see it continue into the future, you can do so in a number of ways. Firstly, make sure you subscribe to this channel on whatever platform you are listening. Like and share the podcast on social media to help spread the word. If you're feeling really generous, head over and leave a review and a rating over on iTunes. This helps spread the word and develop the podcast. Make sure you check out the range of t-shirts we have over at the Exponential Performance Podcast store, and this includes the Harden Up t-shirts. All the profits from these will go straight back into the podcast directly to help the production of it. All of this will help the podcast continue long into the future so we can keep bringing you the information you need to train hard, but most importantly, train smart. We'll talk to you next week.